Welcome back to Forgotten Hollywood. So, I saw the new Superman movie, and automatically, when I come out of it, I started thinking, how does this compare to the other versions of Superman I've seen? Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Superman ever. I'm more of a Batman girl myself, hence the Batarang behind me. But I decided to kind of weigh it against the ones that I had seen. Bud Collyer, Kirk Alyn, George Reeves, Christopher Reeve, Dean Cain, Tim Daly, Tom Welling, Brandon Routh, Henry Cavill, and now David Corenswet. I haven't seen all versions, but I have seen a fair number. And I think I can speak with some authority about the plot and origins and the way that Superman as a character should be based on my experiences watching a lot of versions of Superman. The first version of Superman that came out on screen was in 1941 with an animated series of short films. These were the ones who had Bud Collyer as the voice of Superman. As far as cartoons go, I wouldn't say that they were fantastic. As far as Superman would go, I wouldn't say it was fantastic. But back in 1941, it was the only one they had. And it was popular. So it was followed in 1948 by Superman, the live-action serial starring Kirk Alyn, and a second serial, which was Atom Man versus Superman in 1950. Same cast. I do want to make a note about these. Back in 1941, back in 1948, back in 1950, they didn't really have a whole lot of television programming. Television was in its infancy at this time. So what people would do is they would go to a movie, and before the movie there would be a serial that they would watch, and that was essentially a television show. And each week one episode would play, and the next week the next episode would play. And so you would have to keep going back to the theater about 15 times to get the entire story. But when I say that these were essentially TV shows, these were not Bugs Bunny shorts, with 7 minutes long. These were 22-minute stories. And, it always leaves you on the cliffhanger. It always wants you to come back the next week to get the next chapter. And they're rather addicting, but it's about 3.5 hours to watch just one of these serials. So I have not watched all of them. But this all led to the very first Superman movie, which was Superman and the Mole Men, which came out in 1951, starring George Reeves. That led to the Adventures of Superman TV show, the more famous one, from 1952 to 1958. That one, I could do a full video on just the Adventures of Superman and how disturbing the studio was in their attempts to keep Superman alive because of popularity, when 2 of the actors on the show had died, including the lead. It took 20 years for them to come back from that because nobody wanted to touch the role after George Reeves passed, until 1978 when Superman came out with Christopher Reeve. And he had 4 of his own movies, and Superman with the Christopher Reeve era ended in 1987. And then 5 years later, you got Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on TV until 1997. And then 4 years after that, you get Smallville until 2011. And during that run, you get Superman Returns. Right after that run, you get Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Justice League. In the current era, we have Superman and Lois, the newest Superman, and then appearances in Black Adam, The Flash, and Shazam, though you technically don't get to see his face in that one. The point that I'm trying to make is there is many, 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 many versions of Superman out there. And as long as they follow the core elements of Superman, they're generally considered good. This Superman has all the core elements. It has the parents that raised him on the farm in Kansas. It's got the core crew of the Daily Planet, including some characters that I remember watching in the Lois and Clark TV show as a kid that I don't usually see, like Kat. And so that was cool to see the other reporters that don't usually get a lot of screen time, because generally in a 2-hour movie, you want to focus on the core characters, and there's not a whole lot of emphasis on the support characters, especially if the bulk of your movie is about fight scenes. The casting, I thought, was actually pretty good. Every character was believable to me. And one of the criticisms I did hear was Lex Luthor. Now, I want to talk about Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is an important element to a Superman story. However, he is not a core element. You can have a Batman movie without showing the Joker, but a lot of the best Batman movies have the Joker. With Lex Luthor is Superman's Moriarty. What I've heard about this Lex Luthor, played by Nicholas Hoult, is that he is super evil. Yes, he is. He is probably as evil as Gene Hackman's version of Lex Luthor. But the difference is that Gene Hackman balanced his evil with humor. Not always him, but the people around him, and him getting frustrated with them and stuff like that. It was funny. It made it so that he wasn't as hard to watch. Nicholas Hoult didn't have the humor. He was just straight out evil. And that made it hard to watch sometimes. Some of the things that he did. So, if you can't handle pure evil as the bad guy, you might skip the movie. My favorite Lex Luthor is the Lois and Clark John Shea. I wouldn't say he was as evil as Gene Hackman or Nicholas Hoult, but he was pretty close. And instead of balancing it as much with humor, he balanced it with more charm. He could actually be charming when he wanted to be. However, this is like the snake oil salesman, where you're kind of going... You're trying to cover up something bad with a smile. And so people who know, but people who don't are like, oh, what a nice guy he is. What a generous person. Look how much money he gave to the orphans. So Lex Luthor is an important element, not a key element. He is in this one. He is not in all of them. He was not in the entirety of the George Reeves era. He did not appear in the movie with him. He did not appear in the 1950s TV show. The only time prior to Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor that character appeared on screen was when Lyle Talbot played him against Kirk Allen's Superman in Atom Man vs. Superman in 1950. Another character I want to talk about that is an actual core character, building block of a Superman story, is Lois Lane. If you're going to have Superman, you have to have Lois. Lois has appeared in every single version of Superman. I have ones I absolutely love. And I have other ones I didn't like as much. I'm not really gonna name names there. But this version of Lois was right up there. I actually really liked her character. I thought Rachel Brosnahan played it very well. She did not come across as a girl boss. She did come across as a professional modern woman, but she was a decent reporter. And you could see, when she would struggle trying to balance the professional work with her personal life, especially when they collided. The relationship between Lois and Clark is a very important aspect. And that I think they did really well here. As far as ranking the chemistry of the couples, I'd say it's a solid 4th after my first 3 favorites. And that's really why this movie keeps taking 4th place, is because they do it well. I have my personal attachment to these other ones. This one was really on par for me with the animated series relationship, mostly because Lois was very much like the character in the animated series. She was not afraid to charge in and tell people what needs to be done. As far as the overarching plot, I've heard a lot of people say it doesn't have a plot, it doesn't really follow a plot. Here's the thing. It's been a very long time since Superman has fought one bad guy in one little neat package of, here's the monster of the week. We're going to take out this one guy in this very simple way and then go home and, visit his mother in Kansas. Superhero stories very, very rarely have just build up one battle and end. That has not been the formula for a very, very long time. Because superheroes, by nature, are fighting more than one villain. Look at Christopher Reeve's Superman. He comes in and he's taking out thieves. He's saving a kitten in a tree. He's going after bank robbers. He's doing all sorts of stuff in one movie. Because that's what Superman does. He doesn't just go after one type of person or one bad guy. Batman. Name any Batman movie where he only takes out one bad guy, one single solitary bad guy. Because there's always layers. There's always multiple bad guys. There's always multiple things that he's doing. And so with this one, it was interesting because there were times that there was things attacking multiple locations at the same time. And so Superman would need to be here, but he'd also need to be here. And so that's why you have the Justice League, or the Justice Gang, as they're called in this movie. There are times that, Superman isn't fighting them because the other superheroes are fighting them. And if you look at even the Justice League cartoon, you have like 2 or 3 members of the Justice League on each mission taking out one bad guy, because you don't need all 47 members of the Justice League to be any one place, generally speaking. I kind of liked that they had that aspect because there are other heroes in existence with Superman. Sometimes the other heroes are handling the monster and Superman can be doing something else. He doesn't have to be everywhere at once. For example, he never went to Gotham. He never had to go to Gotham. If other superheroes started showing up in Gotham, they'd probably upset the resident hero for invading his space. So I didn't have any issue with there being multiple fights, multiple layers of stuff going on, multiple crimes being committed. Because that's just a standard superhero thing. So in summary, this Superman, was it the best? No. Was it the worst? Not even close. I would say if you really like Superman, just Superman, the character, give the movie a try. It's pretty good. If you like the Guardians of the Galaxy, I would see the movie. Yes. Because it had that feel to it. If you only like the brooding, serious Superman, then you might skip the movie. Because you won't like this. This one is a lot lighter, a lot happier. Other than some language, I don't think it would even be PG-13. Thanks for watching. What's your favorite version of Superman? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell for notifications, and I will catch up with you next time.